I have permitted the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation to present a ministerial statement. The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for permitting me to make this ministerial statement. Madam Speaker, the ministerial statement is on the effects of the 90 days foreign aid suspension by the United States of America from a Zambian perspective or context. Madam Speaker, the government of the United States of America, the USA, on 20th January 2025, through an executive order signed by His Excellency President Donald J. Trump, commenced a 90-day global freeze on aid to foreign partners to re-evaluate and redesign U.S. foreign aid with its foreign policy objectives. The executive order froze all U.S. foreign aid disbursement worldwide pending the outcome of the re-evaluation and realignment process, leading to the suspension of funding for various programs supported by the United States Agency for International Development and other U.S. government-funded initiatives. In order to meet the expectations of the American people, the U.S. government, during the period under review, will decide whether to resume, modify, or terminate assistance. In this regard, on Wednesday, 29th January 2025, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Tourism, Bank of Zambia, and other relevant institutions held a meeting with His Excellency Mr. Michael Gonzalez, Ambassador of the United States of America to Zambia, to gather preliminary information on the implications of the new U.S. policies. Madam Speaker, it is worth noting that the United States of America established diplomatic relations with Zambia in 1964, following Zambia's independence, and has long been one of Zambia's most valued development partners. Zambia receives approximately US $600 million annual aid from the American people, which represents a significant portion of Zambia's external assistance. The USA supports key sectors such as health, agriculture, education, and governance. The support is dispersed through various channels such as the USAID, aforementioned, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, Department of Defense, Peace Corps, and the Millennium Challenge Corporation. 75% of the total U.S. assistance to Zambia is channeled to the health sector, of which the biggest portion goes towards supporting the country's HIV/AIDS response activities and health commodities. Currently, there are over 16,000 health workers and community health workers remunerated under these health programs. This aid has led to a significant reduction in the maternal mortality rate and an increase in the life expectancy in the country. Madam Speaker, it is important to mention that there was a second order issued by the U.S. State Department to waive the freeze on humanitarian assistance, and this was viewed as a move that was greatly welcomed, not only by the Zambian government, but by others who equally benefit from the generosity of the people of the United States of America. The waiver covers life-saving medicines and medical services, food, shelter, and humanitarian assistance. This support granted to Zambia through the U.S., beg pardon, I'll read that again, Madam Speaker. Thus, support granted to Zambia through the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, which was benefiting over 1 million citizens through access to antiretroviral drugs, is likely not to be affected by the initial executive order. From our preliminary analysis, Madam Speaker, we expect that the health sector, in relation to the provision of life-saving medicines and medical services, feeding programs aimed at addressing hunger and malnutrition, will be exempted from the aid freeze. I wish, Madam Speaker, to reiterate and emphasize that initial or preliminary analysis. For sectors not covered by the waiver and benefiting from the U.S. aid, we expect impact of varying degrees. Further, it is premature at this stage to highlight comprehensively the magnitude of the sectoral impact resulting from this freeze, as relevant authorities are yet to determine what that impact might be. Madam Speaker, as a way forward, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Tourism, Bank of Zambia, and other relevant stakeholders will continue to monitor the policy re-evaluation and realignment process by the U.S. government in order to implement appropriate interventions and avert detrimental occurrences. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members are now free to ask questions on points of clarification on the ministerial statement presented by the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. The Honorable Member for Lubanseshi.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and Honorable Minister, thank you for the update. My question, on behalf of the good people of Lubanseshi constituency, is regarding to the stakeholders or government institutions that you have mentioned, that they are monitoring how things will be done in USA. Then from that point, you are able now to come up with the measures and interventions. Honorable Minister, as you might be aware, that this aid that Zambia has been benefiting from United States of America in terms of wealth and other programs have direct effect to our people. And the President has already indicated, President Donald Trump, that this is the measure that have taken place. My quick question to you, in your thinking and understanding, is it a good approach to wait and monitor, or instead of quickly to take up an action on how you can preserve the lives of the people, especially those who are depending on ARVs and the other medicine? I submit.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much to the Honorable Member from Lubanseshi for that very important question. Madam Speaker, in the statement, I do not recall mentioning specifically that we are waiting exclusively. It doesn't mean that when we say we are waiting to see further what the ultimate position will be, that there are no interventions that are being considered by the Zambian government. That would be imprudent. So I'm aware that the Honorable Minister of Finance, for example, is looking at what the possible implications are of this situation that we are faced with and what adjustments might have to be made in order to address them. I think also the Honorable Member may recall that His Excellency the President made a policy pronouncement whilst I believe that was when we were at the African Union Summit, that there is need for not just Zambia, but many of our brother and sister countries that rely on development aid, to look inward as a continent to finding ways of being more self-sustainable. So from both a short-term and a long-term perspective, government is looking at means and ways of addressing generally the reliance by least developed countries on assistance from others. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Let me give an opportunity to Honorable Member for Kantanshi, who is joining us virtually. Honorable Member for Kantanshi. Probably as he's getting ready, we can give the opportunity to Honorable Member for Mwense. Honorable Member for Kantanshi, be ready.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. Minister, with what you have said, the $600 million as a generosity from the people of America is quite a substantial amount of money. Now, obviously, going forward, and given the reports that are existing with President Trump being in Washington, obviously global politics and obvious global financing is likely to change. So from ourselves as Zambia, what is it on the assumption that this 600 million is completely scrapped from being given to us? In terms of the government position, Minister, what is it that they are going to focus on in terms of our domestic resource mobilization? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I thank the Honourable Member from Mwense for that, again, equally important question. I think it underscores the importance of the subject that we are discussing. Madam Speaker, in my statement, I did mention that it would be premature at this stage, given that the initial assessment period is a 90-day period, for us to make certain assumptions, such as the assumption that the total amount of $600 million will not be available. I also alluded to the fact that the bulk of that amount goes towards health services. And as we speak now, there is in place another executive order, well, not an executive order, another order, shall I say, which speaks to ensuring that life-saving monies that are used towards life-saving humanitarian assistance are not scrapped off. So, in short, Madam Speaker, I'll reiterate that at this stage it would be premature to say with any certainty that there's a plan of X, Y, and Z that is in place because it hasn't reached maturity. Suffice to say and repeat perhaps that obviously the Honourable Minister of Finance continues to look at what contingencies need to be put in place, and those would be brought to the people through this House at an appropriate time. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member for Kantanshi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Am I loud and clear?
Yes, but if we can see your face, we're just seeing the top of your head.
I'm actually trying to... I have pressed the video button, but not to waste much of your time, Madam Speaker. Honourable Minister, thank you so much for your statement. Obviously, it comes at a time when there is a lot of concern, particularly in the health sector, and also the education sector also does receive that kind of support. But we are where we are because the United States of America has decided to make this policy shift. And quite clearly, the statements that are coming out of there has been that the agency that really supports this sort of gesture that we're receiving, the USAID, has been under extreme check in terms of whether what they have been doing represents American values. Now, remember, 80% of our budget now is being raised locally. One would have expected that this opportunity, this unfortunate, obviously change in the policy shift, would have expected government to immediately come up with immediate solutions to curb what might be a possible policy shift, because definitely there will be some effect in terms of what will be coming to Zambia. What maybe would you say out there, especially to those that highly depend on this support in terms of work, in terms of research and all the things that they've been doing? What message would you send as government to them in terms of some of the immediate steps that will be taken? Because if we are going to be, waiting and assuming that there might be a change of heart, we might be preparing ourselves wrongly. So I just wanted to hear what the government is going to do as a response to this would-be and possible continuation of the new foreign policy in as far as what the U.S. is announcing out there. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I hope the Honorable Minister heard the question. Honorable members, as we ask questions, let's be precise to the point so that we get a question, a clear question. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My understanding of the question, and I thank the Honorable Member for Kantanshi as well, really the long and short is the same question that has been asked already by the two previous members, which is what are the fiscal measures that government is putting in place in view of the situation we find ourselves in. Madam Speaker, I think I have belabored to respond to that question on three fronts. First, we cannot work on speculation. This, as we know, currently the facts that we have is that there's a 90-day review. Second, that there is an order in place which speaks to the matter that the Honourable Member has asked about, which is in the health sector, and that it would appear that there would be an exemption. But perhaps to answer the question from a different perspective, government will always and continues to be responsible for the welfare and well-being of its people. And therefore, perhaps the assurance that can be given is that government will look at all measures that can be put in place to avoid a negative impact on the citizenry on account of the policy shift that we have seen. I think that is the fairest, perhaps, answer that I can give at this stage. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Kwacha.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, once again for the opportunity given. Honourable Minister, the impact of the withdrawal of aid on all developmental programs cannot obviously be emphasized. I'm looking at the gap that will be created from this withdrawal. And as a government, how do we intend to fill up for this gap that will be created? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
It's the same question coming in different forms, though. I don't know whether the Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm so grateful for the observation from Madam Speaker that it appears to be a similar sort of concern that is repeating itself. And Madam Speaker, it's important for us to maybe, in responding to these questions, also recognize that indeed, as a country, we are aware of the importance of the assistance that has been coming to us from the people of the United States of America. We remain eternally grateful. As mentioned in my ministerial statement, the interventions that they have put over the years have been life-saving in their nature. And therefore, perhaps one of the continued efforts that we'll be making from a diplomatic perspective as well as from the perspective of the other sector ministries is that we'll continue to engage with our counterparts diplomatically from the US to explain the importance of their continued support to the people of Zambia, and the fact that its sudden withdrawal in complete and total terms would have a telling effect on over 1 million people that currently benefit from the aid that is given. So the answer then to this question in particular would be there is need for continued engagement at various levels and including at high level, so that the transition, as it were, is one that is more manageable. And that is something that we are doing and will continue to do. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Chifubu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Minister, Dambisa Moyo, in her book, Dead Aid, has warned African countries against heavy dependence on foreign aid, which include our country, Zambia. Today, we have been found in a very big predicament as a result of this temporal suspension of the aid. My question to you is, what impact does this aid have on the budget, and what are the future measures if the aid is not restored?
Another manner of asking the same question. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm grateful that this ministerial statement gives us an opportunity to discuss matters of general policy, such as that raised by the Honourable Member for Chifubu. I think the Honourable Member has referred to a publication which was very popular in the last decade or so by our very own Dambisa Moyo with regard to dead aid, as he referred to it. I would like perhaps to take the perspective, Madam Speaker, in responding to this question, that the Zambian government, under the New Dawn administration, has taken with regard to its relations with foreign nations. And I think this is something that our chief diplomat, the President of the Republic of Zambia, has repeated, that our approach now is one of economic diplomacy. And what does that entail? It entails a steady shift towards strategic partnerships rather than aid. And so perhaps the concern by the Honourable Member for Chifubu would be addressed from that perspective. In fact, I would dare to say, Madam Speaker, that our engagements as a country, and indeed in the wider global community, have shown that there is a shift away from development assistance to partnerships. And the Honourable Member for Chifubu will see that, for example, we have signed very recently in 2023 a strategic comprehensive partnership with one of our key foreign partners, China. We have in place various agreements and documents that enhance our relations with various foreign countries so as to give this country, afford this country an opportunity to have investments flow into the country and therefore to have financial flows into the country, which ultimately will address the concern that has been raised as to whether we do as Zambia have a particular plan as to how we'll be more self-reliant. I would also venture to mention that at the just ended Africa Union Summit, one of the key discussions was how do we as a continent rely on each other more in terms of trade inflows and investment on the continent. These are perhaps some of the long-term approaches that will see the concerns raised by the Honourable Member for Chifubu addressed ultimately. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Kamfinsa.
Honourable Minister, you have taken note that literally everyone is asking a question that is centered around money and how that financing gap will be resolved. In your response, you are giving assurance that there is no need to panic because we haven't yet reached that stage where there is no money to procure drugs, there is no money to procure supplies for the healthcare. You are giving a picture that there's no need for people to panic. Madam Speaker, the reality is that we have people that are, for instance, utilizing ARVs that are actually panicking. And why MPs are asking, what is the plan? I think the answer they are interested in is not the diplomatic answer of we are engaging, because engaging is engaging. But the fact is that 90 days, Madam Speaker, will elapse. And there's a likelihood that it might be extended. So to avoid reaching that stage, Madam Speaker, where the problem happens, I expected the minister maybe to give us in terms of steps. We will bring, for instance, a supplementary budget where we'll ask this parliament to allocate this emergency fund so that we have a secured position. Minister of Foreign Affairs, do we have in place intentions to set aside resources within our budget to sort out this emergency? This is a crisis, Minister. Do we have something that we are doing ourselves instead of waiting for these negotiations to continue? Because clearly, Madam Speaker, there is panic out there. And I think that is the position which these MPs are interested to hear. Madam Speaker, that is my follow-up question.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Perhaps the Honourable Member for Kamfinsa did not fully understand, or maybe not the word understand, but hear the response when I said that the Honourable Minister of Finance is looking at contingency measures. I think that's what I meant, essentially, that there must be measures that we'll take ourselves. And the Honourable Minister has the mechanism of having a supplementary budget as and when necessary, when it crystallizes. So if the eventuality does come through, then certainly we will be engaged, as I said earlier, as Parliament, by the Honourable Minister of Finance, by this government, on how we can address this. In the meantime, of course, the numbers are being looked at as to what that will actually entail. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Lundazi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving it.
As the time is 10:40, I suspend business for 20 minutes for a health break.